everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com and it's time for Monday Night Raw Graded, and you know what? This Raw felt like there was a lot of stuff in it. Like, even for a Raw, which is always jam-packed because it's 3 hours long, but this Raw especially felt like there was a lot of stuff in it. But how are we going to tell which of that stuff was good and which of that stuff was bad? There's only one way to find out, and that's by assigning each individual segment a lovely individual grade. Yes, as I said, this is Monday Night Raw Graded. So we start things off with the big dog, Roman Reigns. But wait, isn't he a SmackDown superstar? Leave that alone, you nerd, because it's the wild card rule. Wild card. But before Roman could even say a word, he was interrupted by the best in the world, Shane McMahon, who came out on the stage and said, I'm going to beat you on Friday at Super ShowDown. And that's when I was like, oh yeah, this is the go-home show for bloody Super ShowDown in Saudi Arabia, isn't it? Oh, that's probably why the show had so much stuff in it. Roman says, no, I disagree, you're not going to win at Super ShowDown, I am. And I was like, yes, that's factually probably true, because he's Roman Reigns. I've got no more analysis to give on this bit. That's just, sometimes wrestlers just tell the truth. Roman also says, correctly again, that Shane isn't the best in the world, he just has a lot of help. And that's true. And speaking of help, here comes Drew McIntyre out on the stage alongside Shane to build up his match with Roman Reigns at the Stomping Grounds pay-per-view later on this month, I believe, towards the end of June. And I was just like, oh, this is why everything's so hectic this week, because they're building to two separate shows, so they've got to do everything as like a double segment or a double build quite a lot of the time. It was a strange feel to Raw this week, if I haven't expressed that enough already. But Drew goes, don't worry about that match though, because we're going to kick your ass right now. We don't need any help. And then they made their way down the ramp, but before they got to the ring, Roman was jumped in the ring by the Revival, who came in through the crowd. So Drew's a big liar, and, you know, they did need help to beat down Roman Reigns. But it's okay, because he was saved by the Usos, and that set up an opening six-man tag. Never happens, does it? This is totally unique and new. I wasn't too impressed with this opening segment for a few reasons, actually, so I'm going to give it a C-. First of all, it was very similar to the sort of opening segment we see time and time again, setting up a tag match either immediately or later on in the night. That sort of stuff happens on virtually every single Raw these days. Also, I get why Shane needs all the help. That makes total sense for his character, but I don't like Drew McIntyre saying, we don't need any help, and then the Revival are there beating up Roman on his behalf. Because Drew's an absolute destroyer. Like, that doesn't really fit with what I want my Drew McIntyre character to be. And also as well, the Revival are now part of Shane's little collective, because of course they are. Soon Shane's going to have like every heel on the roster. He's building a new corporate ministry. And now that I've said it, I'm actually all for that. So then we get that six-man tag, so it's Drew McIntyre and the Revival against Roman Reigns and the Usos, and this is quite a standard Raw tag team sort of six-man match, and it went on for a decent amount of time. I think it may have been the longest match on the show. I think there were only 4 matches on the show though, which for a 3-hour show is kind of not that many, is it really, to be honest? The heels got the win after Shane pushed one of the Usos when he was on the top rope. I think it was Jay, and sort of crotched him on the top rope, and that led to the heels taking control, dragging one of the Usos out of the ring, where the Revival were able to hit the Shatter Machine on the outside, and then in the ring, the other Uso suffered a Claymore kick, and that was enough to pick up the big heelish victory. After the match, Roman took another Shatter Machine, and then the heels all talked trash to him, and then they propped him up and allowed Shane McMahon to hit a not very good spear on Roman. But I liked that the spear wasn't very good, because it would have been silly if Shane had just ran through him like Goldberg. It's better that Shane's got a bit of a crap spear, actually. I think again that sort of fits. I'm going to give this a B-. I think the match was decent. The post-match stuff was fairly entertaining in a sort of getting heat on Shane sort of way, like, oh, I hate him so much, which was effective, but it was hurt sort of flow-wise by several commercial breaks in between. So it's time now for Miz TV, and Miz's guest this week is the Universal Champion, Seth Rollins. Miz says, right, Seth, let's talk about your match with Baron Corbin for the Universal title at Super ShowDown in Saudi Arabia. But then he points out that match might not actually even happen, because of course Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman have announced that Lesnar's going to be cashing in his Money in the Bank contract tonight on Monday Night Raw. If you haven't seen Raw, just think now in your brain, just on your own, in your mind, whether that happened or not, and I'll just reveal later on whether it did. Just think, and then we'll see if you're right later on. Yep, let's continue. In fact, Seth echoes all of our thoughts and basically says, I really will believe it when I see it, if Brock's going to cash in tonight on me. And also, He doubted even that Brock was going to show up on Monday Night Raw. And then we cut backstage to Brock and Paul Heyman showing up on Monday Night Raw. I was like, wow, production have really done Seth dirty there. But Heyman and Lesnar went as if they were going to go to Gorilla, like to the arena, and then stopped, and then went down a different corridor instead. It was a little bit of a dirty tease. I've put in my notes here, actually. They walk off down a different corridor. Maybe there was a sleeping Snorlax on the way to the ring and they needed to go and find the poker flute first. But I took it out because I thought it was a bit too random and niche just to drop a Pokemon Red and Blue reference in there. But now I've put it back in because I'm a maverick. I do what I want. This gets to see, it was a bit of a nothing segment really, nothing happened, you know, we just had Miz TV and then Brock and Paul arriving, and usually I may have given it a few bonus points just because it would have built the tension nicely, like everyone's like, ooh, Brock's here, is he going to cash in later on? But I don't think it was quite effective because nobody believed that Brock was actually cashing in later on. Next up, the Lucha House Party get to the ring and we'll never know why they made their entrance. It could have been for a 6-man tag against the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, but we'll never find out because they were immediately interrupted by their current rival, Big Bad Lars Sullivan. Ugh. Lars hit the ring and all 3 members of the Lucha House Party jumped him and started to beat him down, and basically they were successful. They didn't beat him up, Lars wasn't like laid out or anything, but he was forced to leave the ring and kind of stalk to the back, and the Lucha House Party stood tall. He's going to absolutely destroy them when the match actually happens, isn't he? This gets a D+ actually, which sounds a little bit harsh, but I just think this felt like a segment of a segment. This felt like something that would happen after a match rather than a segment on its own, and it just was one of many examples of Raw just having so much stuff in it this week that nothing got quite enough of a chance to breathe. Next up, it's Becky Lynch, and she hits the ring and cuts a promo about how content she's feeling. She says she's reflected on her success over the course of 2019 and she's never felt more content, and everyone's like, oh, that's nice, and then she goes, no, being content is very dangerous because that's when champions slip up and that's when champions lose. And I was like, that's a good line. This is a pretty good promo, but then she's cut off by Lacey Evans. Lacey does her style of promo where she's sauntering down to the ramp as she's talking, where she says, Becky, you're just a dog chasing a car, and I'm going to take your title because you're not the right sort of woman to represent the Raw Women's Division, and I am. And, you know, Lacey Evans pretty much cuts the same sort of promo each time, but she does deliver it well, in fairness. But then Charlotte arrives, Charlotte Flair, SmackDown superstar, but wild card, and if you don't like it, you're a big fat loser, so just get on board with the wild card, bitches. Charlotte gets in the ring and gets into a bit of an argument, well, with all of them, with both of the women in the ring, but mainly with Lacey Evans, actually, not Becky Lynch. Her and Lacey square off, and Lacey says, right, Charlotte, you may be a 9-time champion, but you've got 0 today. And I was like, very good point. Very good point. Why is Charlotte bragging when she lost the SmackDown title so recently? Then Lacey hits Charlotte, slaps her. I'm not sure what it was. She kind of falls into her with her fist. It was weird, and it was especially weird from Lacey Evans, who does throw good strikes because her finishes a right hand. I was a bit confused by that, but basically that was the end of the segment, and it was about to set up a match between Lacey and Charlotte. I'm gonna give this a C. It started off strong with Becky's very good promo and Lacey's good promo, and then when Charlotte came along, my main issue with this whole segment was Charlotte's tone. I don't know if that's more Charlotte's fault or the fault of how she's being written, I suppose. But basically, she's just far too happy and smug for someone who got absolutely embarrassed by Bayley recently and lost her SmackDown Women's Championship. Yeah, I just feel like she should be showing a bit more anger and fire and desperation, which you can still have as a heel. You know, you don't need to necessarily get people to cheer you while you're being all determined and angry, but I just don't understand why she's smiling and laughing. It was a bit John Cena for my liking. Next up, we did have that match between Lacey Evans and Charlotte Flair with Becky at ringside, and before I watched Raw, I saw that this match was getting absolutely slated online. People were criticizing it quite a lot. I don't think it was as bad as people were making out. I just think the main issue was that nobody was really into it. The crowd were pretty dead. It was heel versus heel, and it just didn't seem a very wise match to put on the show. And yeah, it was also a little bit clunky at times, and that didn't help, especially with the crowd already not being too invested in it. Charlotte and Lacey hit a double crossbody, like running crossbody sort of thing, leading to a double down towards the end of the match, and then the ending came when Becky just had enough, grabbed Charlotte and dragged her out the ring, and then attacked Lacey Evans and hit her with the manhandle slam. Yeah, unfortunately this gets a D grade from me. It wasn't a D match, I think it was slightly stronger than that, but I just think that it shouldn't have taken place in the first place. I don't know why Charlotte Flair showed up. This is another example of the wild card rule kind of muddying things on Raw and SmackDown. I think that Charlotte's got more than enough to take care of over on the blue brand, so why does she have to show up on Raw? This should have been about building to Becky versus Lacey, not engineering a conflict between Charlotte and Lacey instead. Next up, we have the United States Champion Rey Mysterio Mysterio, who cuts a babyface promo about how much he loves wrestling, it's in his blood, and now that's something he gets to share with his son because they're training together. It's quite nice, but you know the real reason that Rey's here is to vacate the United States title because of his injuries. Or so we thought, but did anyone else... I haven't seen too much furore about this, but I was just really not pleased with what happened next. So then Samoa Joe comes out and cuts him off and says, well, right, Rey, come on, just hurry up and give me the belt back because, you know, you never beat me. And I'm thinking, well, he did beat you at Money in the Bank. Yes, Joe's shoulder was clearly off the canvas, but the referee's decision is final and counted 3. If we went back through the course of wrestling and corrected every wrong refereeing decision, then what would be the point of any... The referee's decision is final even when he makes a mistake. You know, it's just how it works. But Rey says he's man enough to realise that he's injured and needs to give the title back. And then he lays the title at Joe's feet and goes to leave. And then Joe attacks him and chokes him out and takes the belt and goes to the back. But that's not my issue. That's fine. Like, it's a sort of very Samoa Joe thing to do. My issue is with the storytelling. Why is he just given the title back to the previous guy who held it? That's not how things have ever worked. Ever. This gets a D, and it's not because of the performance of either guy, because the promos were good. It's totally to do with the writing. What? Why is Rey just giving him the belt back? Yes, he beat him on an incorrect pinfall, but that happens all the time in wrestling. Things happen, either deliberately or accidentally, not as part of the storyline, but the things happen that are wrong, and that's part of wrestling. That's part of the very fabric and conflict of wrestling. Don't just give the belt back to the previous champion. Have a tournament for the vacant belt and actually have Joe win that to give him some credibility back. Or, you know what, I just think this Raw could have used a few more wrestling matches in it. As I say, I think there were only 4, and I just would have rathered more wrestling, less segments this week, and that would have been a perfect reason to do so. And I'm assuming, by the way, that Joe is the official United States champion again, because Wikipedia told me so. But I did a bit of Googling around, and everyone seems to agree that, yeah, Joe is the champion again. And no one seems to be too annoyed about this. Am I the only one? Have I missed something? Let me know in the comments, please, what you think of this. I'm very interested to hear. It's all right, I'll cheer up in a second, because the next segment is arm wrestling time with Braun Strowman and Bobby Lashley. Yes! Right, so to help everyone out, I've done a template of every arm wrestling segment in wrestling history ever. This is what happens every time, so just follow the template and you'll understand what happened in this segment, because this one didn't deviate at all. So the heel will stall beforehand and frustrate the babyface, maybe try and cheat or come up with an excuse and stall, and the babyface will get really annoyed and the crowd will be like, come on, beat him, beat this heel in this arm wrestling match. They'll stop and start a few times and then effectively, you know, they'll eventually begin properly and the heel will get the upper hand. Bit of tension, you know, it's how wrestling works. And then the babyface will win and then, you know, they'll celebrate. And then the heel will do something cheap or they'll attack them and then one of the two will stand tall at the end of the segment. And that's exactly what happened here. Bobby Lashley stalled, Braun Strowman eventually won, and then Lashley threw chalk in his face. It's like WrestleMania 9, Yokozuna and Bret Hart. And then Bobby Lashley was the one who stood tall at the end, hitting a very, to be fair, very impressive running power slam on Braun Strowman, who is literally a giant. Again, this is another D grade, but it would have been lower. It would have been lower because I hated this, but I've given it such a boost because that power slam was genuinely very impressive. Best thing Bobby Lashley's done in absolutely ages. Next up, we have Peyton Royce versus Nikki Cross with Billie Kay in Peyton Royce's corner and Alexa Bliss continuing her alliance with Nikki Cross and supporting her from ringside. And once again, one of the women's tag team champions loses a match. They cannot buy a win, either of them. Peyton on her own, Billie on her own, or the Iconics together. They lose all the time. This is a standard sort of match. There's nothing particularly special or bad about it, but it is a little bit slow-paced, I guess. Eventually Nikki Cross wins clean, but that's not the important story here. Midway through the match, Alexa gets a coffee delivered to her at the bottom of the ramp, and then the Iconics knock it out of her hand and push her down and stuff, and Alexa's fuming on the outside. Meanwhile, back in the ring, Nikki Cross pins Peyton Royce, and then Alexa gets in the ring while Nikki's celebrating and just destroys the Iconics. I think she hits her DDT on Billie Kay, and she's just really fuming and shaking, and not very Alexa Bliss-like at all. We've seen Alexa Bliss be vengeful and sneaky, but never like a little rage monster. It's quite an interesting development. So C-, I didn't really enjoy the match, and I didn't enjoy the fact that one of the Iconics lost yet again, but I am intrigued by this sort of character development for Alexa Bliss. Are we going to see crazy, unhinged Alexa Bliss in the mold of Nikki Cross? I kind of want that. Next up, Seth Rollins comes back out and he's ready for Brock Lesnar to cash in the Money in the Bank contract, but it's not Brock Lesnar who comes out, it's bloody Baron Corbin. Corbin says he's going to win on Friday in Saudi Arabia, blah, blah, blah. He retired Kurt Angle at WrestleMania, and he's going to end Seth Rollins' career as well. That's enough for Rollins, who attacks. They have a little bit of a brawl. Rollins dumps Corbin to the outside and has the upper hand, and then Brock Lesnar's music hits, but he doesn't come out. It's just a distraction, allowing Corbin to get back in the ring and hit the end of days on Seth. And then Lesnar's music hits again, and this time he comes out with Heyman and with the briefcase as well, and just decimates a weakened Seth. There's chair shots, low blows, F5s, Germans, all that sort of thing. And Heyman is just on the outside, desperate for Brock to cash in. And Brock leans over the top rope and goes, "No, Friday." And both myself and Heyman and everybody watching around the world are going, why not? Why not cash in right now? He's so weak. You've just destroyed this man. Take the Universal Championship. It's the only thing that makes logical sense. But Brock doesn't. You know, he heads off to the back with Heyman. Then he grabs the briefcase and runs back in the ring, and he's going to do it again. But no, he just beats up Seth some more, and then they head to the back, and Seth does a stretcher job and is actually taken out in an ambulance, and Becky joins him in the ambulance. And why did Brock not cash in? Why is he waited until Friday? I know why in real life. I know why. But why in kayfabe is he not cashing in right there and then? I'm going to have to give this a B-. If it wasn't for that, it would be the strongest segment on the show by far, but it only gets a B- because, I mean, despite the great beatdown and the great selling from Seth, I just want to know why Lesnar didn't cash in. And in fairness, I will apologise for this if they come up with a good and strong reason why Brock Lesnar waited until this Friday, but I genuinely can't see one. I can't see them coming up with a good enough reason at all. Next up, it's time for the bloody Firefly Fun House, which is great because we go from Michael Cole's serious voice, like Seth's being taken out in an ambulance, we all really hope he's okay, Becky Lynch is by his side, and now it's time for the Firefly Fun House. The most unintentionally funny part of this week's Raw. So we get maybe the most noteworthy Firefly Funhouse episode since the first one, since this all started, because it featured a puppet of Vince McMahon. Yes, that is quite correct, and the puppet was genuinely quite hilarious. It had the voice of Vince, but more than the voice, the thing that really tickled me was the appearance of it. The mouth or something, it was weird, but it was good. The whole theme of this one is exercise. Bray Wyatt has a little doll with him, or a little puppet called Huskus, which is obviously a reference to Husky Harris, which I didn't get until Ross mentioned it just before in the office, so I'm glad he did before I came in to shoot this video. I'm going to give this a B+. It deserves higher probably because it was genuinely hilarious, but again, we still haven't seen Bray Wyatt yet, and I'm just starting to get diminishing returns until he shows up. Next up, we get a promo off between Triple H and Randy Orton, who I totally forgot were having a match in Saudi Arabia, but they are, and it seems almost like they'd forgotten as well, because they just cut a 10-minute promo on each other about how they've got nothing to say. We've got nothing else to say. We've taken each other to war before, and now I made you into one of the best in this business, and you have become Randy. And Randy's like, yeah, well, blah, blah, blah. They just, it's almost like they are also in on the joke that we are having. It's like they know, they're like, yeah, this match has no build and no reason to exist, but we'll just go out and talk about that. We'll just talk about why there's no reason. It was weird. It was a weird segment. It did drag on quite a lot, and they talked about balls. Triple H was like, I'm going to get my balls through TSA, and Randy was like, what? And Triple H was like, you haven't got any balls. And I was like, where's all this balls talk coming from? This gets a D+. At least they were honest about having nothing to say, I suppose. And at least Triple H got some NXT chants as well. Nice to see. Hopefully Vince was paying attention backstage, but he was probably just laughing about the balls jokes. Next up, we have, I think, the third match between Ricochet and Cesaro, who previously had one win over each other each, and this is the rubber match. It's the best match on the show because it's Ricochet and Cesaro, and Ricochet gets the clean win with a cradle after an exchange of pinning predicaments between the two. And yes, it's a good match, and both guys are really nimble and athletic and impressive, but despite this feud being a great one in the ring, it's not for any reason really, is it? We need more of a storyline behind this, I think. There's more, though. The segment isn't over yet because Cesaro's annoyed that he lost, and he goes to get a table from the outside to just do some damage to poor Trevor. So Cesaro pulls the table out, and R-Truth's on it with his 24/7 championship. He's been hiding under the ring. Various points throughout the night showed segments of like Carmella and other people looking for R-Truth and they couldn't find him. It's because he was under the bloody ring. I hope you enjoyed the show. Truth is now kind of exposed, and he's like, oh no, I've been caught. Ricochet dives onto Cesaro on the outside, and that's all dealt with. But now, here comes Carmella to join R-Truth at ringside. She's like, there you are, where have you been? And she's followed by all of the undercard, all of the underclass of Monday Night Raw, led, of course, by Drake Maverick, who's been excellent, who has been brilliant online and on social media in pushing this 24/7 championship. He's been doing a superb job. There's a little bit of a scuffle on the outside. No one quite knows what to do. They're all grabbing at R-Truth, and then Cedric Alexander gets in the ring and hits a huge dive onto the crowd, but Truth manages to slide into the ring as Cedric flies over the top. Now it's just Carmella and Truth alone in the ring, and they're like, yes, we've escaped again, but there's Drake Maverick sliding in from the other side like a sneaky little boy. Oh, what's he gonna do? Carmella just just super kicks his actual face off, and then Truth and Carmella run away. And I enjoyed it again. I know it divides opinion, but I'm firmly on the positive side of this 24/7. I like it. It's fun. It's fun and silly and fun. It gets a B, this whole segment. Good match between Ricochet and Cesaro. Yes, I'd enjoy more reason for the two to be squaring off, but the 24/7 stuff was fun and enjoyable. Again, I like it. Shoot me. And finally, the last segment after what felt like a 5-hour Raw at times, with about 3 minutes left on the show. It's time for The Undertaker. You've left it a bit late, Undertaker, mate. So Taker comes out, there's the gong, everyone's like, oh, it's The Undertaker. Because of course it's The Undertaker, you know? We're never disappointed to see him. But let's see what he said. Right, I've written down, he says that Goldberg will come face to face with death. He'll choke on the stench of souls that have already gone. He doesn't want Goldberg the family man. He wants the unstoppable icon, and he's going to claim his soul for all eternity. It's every Undertaker promo. Every single one. Apart from when he was the American Badass. And he ends it though by saying, Goldberg, you're next. Ooh, because Goldberg used to say, you're next. His opponent's next. And Taker's saying, well, you're next, Goldberg. Okay. Oh, I'm hyped for this one. I don't know what to say about this segment. Get to C, straight down the middle. Cheers for that, Mark. Thanks, mate. See you on Friday. No, see you on SmackDown. Bloody hell. Overall, this gets a D+ grade. It wasn't an enjoyable Raw for me. It was a bit of a slog. There was just so much stuff, mainly because it was the go-home Raw before Super ShowDown in Saudi Arabia, and it just felt like they were building to too much. There was too much going on, and I know 3 hours is a very long time, and sometimes it feels like they're trying to fill it, but in this case, it felt like there was too much stuff, even for a 3-hour show, and that really affected it for me. And also, not enough wrestling. 4 matches and a lot of segments, like a lot of non-wrestling segments. So D+ is the grade, and that's it for Graded from Austin, Texas. Thanks very much for watching, and let us know what you think in the comments section down below. You can follow Cultaholic on Twitter at Cultaholic and on Facebook at facebook.com/Cultaholic. If you enjoy what we do, then please do check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Cultaholic, where you can pledge. And don't forget, of course, most importantly of all, to hit subscribe and to join us.